Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Being Human Now show. I'm your host, Jennifer Locksmith, and today we have Wayne McRoy Jr. with us. Wayne has been warning people about the dangers of AI and the Transhumanist Agenda since 2017. He's the author of numerous books, such as Cybernetic Messiah, Building the Antichrist System, The Alchemical Tech Revolution, Fulfilling Ancient Esoteric Agendas Through the Use of High Technology, The Demic of Pan, Breaking the Natural Order, and these are just to name a few. You can find and purchase all of Wayne's books at Amazon.com by typing his name, Wayne McRoy, into the search. He is also the host of the Alchemical Tech Revolution podcast and the Synchro podcast. You can find both of his shows on his website, alchemicaltechrevolution.com, which I will provide in the show notes to make it easy for everybody to click on. Welcome, Wayne McRoy, to the Being Human Now show. Thank you so much for your service to humanity. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure to get on some new platforms and maybe introduce my work to some new people because the things we'll be talking about here are very important in the upcoming future. And I've seen the whole transhumanist philosophy unrolling before my eyes for a good long time now, and I've been trying to sound the alarm bells about that whole coming thing for a very long time at this point. And now we're seeing a lot of things come to fruition.
Oh, yeah, big time. Big time. I totally agree. So, as we just kind of got into, we are under attack, mind, body, and spirit, as is the natural world of which we are a part. If you had to sum it up to someone who just got here and was clueless, how would you describe our situation, Wayne?
Well, essentially, what you need to understand about everything going on in the world today as it relates to not only technology, but just the state of being we're in right now, it all has ties back to the occult. And as much as I don't want that to be the case, it's always present there. So you could trace back this whole philosophy that has become known as transhumanism. You could trace it all the way back to what's known as the ancient mystery schools of antiquity. And of course, these teachings that they've kept hidden from the masses for the longest time have been brought forward by many of the different secret society groups and occult fraternities throughout the course of time. And many of the ideals that they've brought forward with their secret doctrine, as they call it, has permeated into our modern scientific culture and has been applied towards technologies which have been kind of re-engineered into this whole philosophy that they call transhumanism. But essentially, it's the same old thing. It's the concept known as apotheosis from some of these ancient mystery schools. So it's all about becoming God, and that's what these people that are running this big agenda want behind the scenes. They want to be the gods of this place in no uncertain terms, and what they're attempting to do is re-engineer not only humanity but the entire natural world to fit into this mode and model where they can be the gods. So they're attempting to build a new reality out of all of this. It's the same old New World Order as been put forward by many of the conspiracy culture gurus of the past. A lot of these same things have always been present for as long as we could look, but now, with the emergence of some of these new technologies that we're seeing, it's more probable than ever before that they could make some of this stuff happen in the way that they want. With the rise of artificial intelligence and all of these different things happening, we are just at the crux of a changeover point in our systems as we see them today and in our culture in general. So we're sitting at a very interesting and dangerous time right now in the history of the world, and we're at a crossroads of sorts. And what's been done here is they've taken some old, well known natural concepts from within these occult fraternities and they've applied them in a more scientific way for our modern viewpoint to be accepted. So they're using these technologies to achieve this age old goal that they've been looking for to become the gods of this place. And now they see that being in their grasp more so than ever before. So there's a lot to unpack, and I doubt we'll get to it all in the time frame we have here. But just to give people an overview, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at this old occult system that's been brought forward by some of the technocrats of today and applied in the form of technology to bring about the same agenda they've been looking for from time immemorial. And we see that on the horizon here as the transhumanist singularity, as they would like to call it.
Yes, absolutely. And as you've said, they call themselves many things, but the Olympians is one of them, as they see themselves as gods of us. As you've mentioned on your show, every president, and I think you've quoted them as saying this, that every president bends a knee to the Brotherhood. And one thing I definitely wanted to bring up that's happening presently, as you said, is the Trump administration is giving 500 billion over the next couple years for AI infrastructure. Um, would you mind talking about that a little bit, as well as Project Stargate?
Yeah, that is the name that they've given this is this Project Stargate, the AI initiative that they're looking for, and they've already been able to obtain $100 billion towards the building of that infrastructure, and they began building some of these data centers down in Texas now for it. But this goes much deeper and beyond that. So they're looking at sinking a ton of money into this AI infrastructure, and this infrastructure is a key component to what it is they would like to roll out in our society today. Because what it's all about is trying to build this control grid around us, this technocratic control grid, wherein all information is centralized in this data utility. And that's what they seek to do. They want to centralize all of the data points that they have on each and every one of us. And to be clear, we're living in the age of big data right now. Data is king. It is the most valuable commodity out there. And they have more data points on individuals than they've ever had before. At this point, they know more about you than you know about yourself with all the data points they've collected on us. So this is goes beyond just our financial records and things like that, transactions and accounts. They know more about you than what you can conceive of right now. And actually, they already have the infrastructure in place to establish a social credit score on each individual here in the United States. It's already present. They just haven't actively rolled it out yet, but they've already modeled some of these systems in China and ported them over to other places, notably to Darwin, Australia. They began porting over some of these ideas. So they're trying to get the infrastructure in place to have this on a grand scale where all of the data will be centralized in one utility. And what am I talking about? Well, they're collecting data of every type on every person. And that's your genomic data, your biometric data, your purchase history, your credit data, your financial transactions, your bank account. Everything will be centralized into this one utility, and it will be regulated by an artificial intelligence. So this is the type of control structure they want to set up, and they want to centralize all this data there, as I was saying. And a lot of this centers around health data. Now, this becomes important when you look at the things that have happened in this world over the course of the past 5 years. Then you begin to realize, why is all of this going on? Why are they all of a sudden trying to centralize all of your health records? And why are they concerned about your vaccine status and all of this stuff? And they want you to have records of this. And they've even gone so far as to make phone apps and stuff showing this during the course of the whole scamdemic that they laid out on us. And the reason for that is because it ties into this central utility that they want. They want to be able to have access to all of your data at the touch of a button. And this is something they want to be possible through the development of this artificial intelligence control grid that they're setting up. And that's what this Stargate project is all about. It's about centralizing all of that in this one utility. And there are some facets to this whole thing that I find hugely troubling. So that's why I've been sounding the alarm bells on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you figure there had to be something. There's got to be something rotten in Denmark. They're trying to push these COVID, I call it needlecraft. Can we say the V word? Or are we going to get censored if we put it on YouTube? Do you know?
No, I'm pretty sure YouTube has kind of pulled back a little bit on the censor
Okay.
now since the Trump administration took office this time.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
noticed that on my own YouTube channel because I kind of been vociferous on as
Yeah.
of late and haven't seen any consequences. So uh,
Okay.
I'll say it all. I can't see us self censoring in that,
Yeah.
but that's totally up to you. I mean,
Yeah.
I want you to
No.
get
I
yourself demonetized or something.
oh no, I don't make any money off the show. I just do it because I'm compelled to. But okay, so we'll call it the vaccine. So the COVID vaccines, um, something you brought up that I find very interesting. You mentioned they're linking this up to the medical industry. Um, in the COVID vaccines, they found 15 rare earth metals that are used in electronics. They also found 62 undeclared chemical elements and also self-assembling nanotechnology. Um, yeah, and I believe you were the only person I've ever heard mention this. Nobium was also found, correct?
Yes, that element's called niobium, and
Oh, niobium. Okay.
I haven't heard anybody else touch on this,
Neither have
but
I. Yeah.
it is a rare earth mineral that is used in a lot of different electronic components. They use it in building aircraft and spacecraft and all kinds of things, and even medical devices. It's
Hmm.
an important component, and it's also something that they use for hologram projection. And I find that hugely interesting as well.
Oh, I did
If you
not.
go back, if you go back and you research niobium and you research some of the things that have been coming out to the public over the course of the past 10, 15 years or so, you'll find that there's if, an, a scientist, his name's Clifford Carnicom, and he actually took it upon himself to use his lab access to identify elements that he found in what he called chemtrail webs or chemtrail spray. After the planes have gone overhead and there's this sediment that collects on plants and branches and stuff like that. Well, he collected some of this and he began analyzing this, and he had done this numerous times. And one of the elements he found present there, as well as strontium, barium, and aluminum, one that he found was this rare earth element called niobium. And that's also a hugely compelling thing because when you consider all the talk that we've heard in conspiracy circles over the course of time about what they call Project Bluebeam, well, this is hologram technology. Well, they're spraying the skies with this holographic component. So
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, what do they have planned? What possible things could come about with this? But it goes
Yeah.
much deeper than that because this element, like I said, is actually used in a lot of different medical devices too, like pacemakers and things like that. They will use niobium because it sits inert in biological tissue. Therefore, your body doesn't recognize it as a toxin and have an immune response to it. So I found this hugely compelling too. And when you begin to understand these were present, now this is according to mainstream scientific peer reviewed journals, this element was present in some of the COVID vaccines that they analyzed. So I find that to be an interesting point of observation here. So you
Hmm.
could draw whatever conclusions you want from that yourself, but I think there's something to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say that it's funny, if you look up chemtrails, you'll find a lot of it'll take you, oh, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory websites. But if you call it what the government calls it, which is stratospheric aerosol injection, which they're putting their money on, you're not going to find that out. It will literally, I mean, at least last time I checked, it will take you to a government website talking about this project, how they are in fact spraying chemtrails. I mean, essentially is what's happening. So yeah, just to repeat that, stratospheric aerosol injection, because I
And
learned that, yeah, and it's interesting.
here's an interesting other little side point for you. Do you know where the term chemtrails came from originally?
No.
It was the title of an Air Force Academy training manual. Chemtrails. I'm not kidding.
Oh my
That's
God.
where the term came from an official Air Force Academy training manual.
Oh
And
my goodness.
most people don't know this. I mean, this
Oh,
is a thing that's been going on for a long time now. That's
yeah.
admitted. I mean, you could look at Dr. David Keith from Harvard University talking about geoengineering programs. They've been
Hmm.
doing they've been quietly doing this stuff in the background, but it's only become mainstreamed over the course of the past couple of years now, where they'll
Yeah.
admit to this. Like you said, they call it all kinds of things,
Yeah.
stratosphere aerosol injection, and there's other terms that they use to refer to this. But essentially, what they're talking about with these geoengineering programs is they're using the whole concept of this climate change crisis that they've manufactured as justification for doing this. So essentially, what they're doing is they're trying to block out the sun to prevent runaway warming of the atmosphere. and it's all a farce. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
there's other things involved with this geoengineering program that they won't admit to publicly.
Hmm. I just think it's wild, Wayne, because I feel like they're definitely violating. Maybe they're just throwing everything at the wall to try to make this happen, but I feel like that's such a violation of free will, because we have no choice but to breathe. Um, so I don't know if they're going to get a whooping for this down the road or what, or maybe they just don't care. But
Well, in
yeah.
their view, they think that they're justified in doing this, and that's why they don't seem to have those concerns. Plus, there's some medicinal things that go on at higher echelon spheres of what this elite class is considered, where they have access to medical care and stuff that we don't. So I think there's certain aspects to it that don't affect them as much because they have the cures, so to say,
Hmm.
for things. So they don't seem as concerned about it because they've got the antidote for everything,
Yeah.
but the public have it.
Yeah. That's true. So I wanted to go back to ask you a question, and you may not be able to answer this. It may remain to be seen. But as far as the COVID vaccines go, we know that they wanted to get this stuff in us, right? And potentially what's it doing to our biology? Um, so my question is, say you have people that are dating, one of them got the vaccine, one of them didn't. How easily can this vaccine be spread? Can it be spread through being intimate? And then, uh, what of the offspring of this union?
Well, Dr. Pierre Corey just recently came out with a study that he put out talking about this because he's explored this avenue of thought immensely here. And what he says is vaccine shedding is going on with these
Okay.
COVID vaccines. Now, they don't understand the mechanism exactly, but he
Okay.
speculates that what a lot of it could be is the body excreting some of these spike proteins in what's known as exosomes. And this is just waste material that the body produces, and it could be spread through saliva droplets, through sweat droplets, and things like this. So
Oh
he's
dear.
saying he's observed this and he's got all the data to back this up. He's done studies on his patients and stuff for this. And he's showing that people can actually pick up these spike proteins and can potentially develop some of these infections from vaccine shedding. So that's a very real thing we have to be concerned with.
So even
Now,
just sharing a drink with someone, if someone takes a sip of your drink,
potentially, yeah. I
oh
mean,
dear.
you're talking, this is according to the research Dr. Pierre Corey's done.
Okay.
And I have seen personally some of this that happens where people do wind up getting sick when they're around somebody who's been recently vaccinated for COVID. I've
Yeah.
seen it personally. I've had it
Hmm.
happen.
Yes, me
So
too.
I mean, there's something to it, and Dr. Pierre Corey's trying to put together the connections here. And all of this has to do with what is the mechanism of contagion, and that's the thing that there's a very poor understanding of overall, not just for COVID, but for diseases in general. The whole notion of what is contagion, what are the mechanisms of contagion, they still don't accurately know. And we have some good models that they use to try to figure this stuff out. But certainly there's something going on with these COVID vaccines, with the shedding. And I'll attest to you my personal story here.
Yeah.
Where I live, we didn't see this so called COVID really turn up until after the vaccination program started. And then it rolled out in mass, and people were dropping left and
Hmm.
right after the vaccines went through the nursing homes and stuff. So I've personally seen a lot of stuff here happen as a result of that. So I find it hugely problematic that the mainstream medical establishment doesn't want to take any of this stuff seriously. And I've been a strong opponent of vaccines for a very long time for some personal reasons, which I explore in some of my books and stuff like that. But
Yes.
the thing is, vaccines are a sacred cow to these people. You dare not question vaccination. And we see that with the installing of RFK into that department that he's been the head of now. So he's getting all kind of backlash for his past views on this stuff. And he's kind of going along with these establishment figures and telling them what they want to hear. with these things because they're all up in arms about questioning their sacred cow vaccines. And if you actually do the research and delve into these things, I've teared apart dozens upon dozens of these vaccine studies. And you find that there's always a couple things present within those studies that are problematic. There's always a conflict of interest, first and foremost. The people who study vaccines, they make a direct profit on vaccines. So, of course, if they've spent billions of dollars in research and development on a new drug, they're going to get that to market however they can. And these are the ones that are studying for safety and efficacy on these things. They're the ones doing the studies. And when you see how the studies are done, you always find they cherry pick data and they put out only the data that they want that supports these vaccines before they put them to market. And then they hide the post market data, and that's problematic. So there's a lot of problems with a lot of it, and I've been vociferous about this publicly since 2017.
Yeah.
So now they've gone a whole different direction with this, and now they've developed and engineered these genetic therapies, these gene therapies that they've marketed as vaccines, and they don't even really fit the classic definition of what a vaccine was. In fact, they had to change the definition of what a vaccine is in order to make it fit that model
Yeah.
before they put it to market.
It's insane. Totally insane. And is it true when you have to be careful about, there's a lot of you got to be careful about the information you see on the internet because they have muddied the waters. But is it true that they are putting these mRNA vaccines in the food supply now?
From what I understand, yeah, they're trying to actually develop mRNA vaccines that they want to vaccinate the animals with. And that's where this whole bird flu notion comes from. That's what this whole agenda is about right now.
Hmm.
I want to go ahead and say, okay, we have a problem. This is how they operate. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. It's problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem, they elicit a reaction from the public, and then they have a ready made solution in place
Hmm.
to fix the problem that they created in the first place. So what they're doing is they have been artificially inflating the numbers of this bird flu thing, and they've been destroying livestock. They've been destroying chickens en masse based upon faulty testing for this. And what am I talking about? Well, you'll notice they're doing the same test for bird flu in the chicken population that they did for COVID in the human population. They're using the reverse transcriptase PCR test, which the developer of this test, Dr. Kerry Mullis, advised us before he died in the summer of 2019, just prior to the rollout of all of this, that this is not intended to be a test to determine whether or not you have some type of an illness or not. It's a manufacturing process wherein you can find a little bit of something and then produce more of it through this process for the purposes of studying. And depending on the number of cycles that you run this through, you could find anything anywhere. And this was something they manipulated during the whole COVID scam, the number of cycles that they would run to find COVID within people using this test. And they're doing the same thing with the bird population, with the chicken population right now. So they will test these chickens, and I think they've mandated in certain places that these larger farms that have the chickens have them tested periodically. So they run a PCR test, and if they find this bird flu present in there, then they call for the culling of the chickens, whether or not they're showing symptoms or not. And that's what they've been doing here to artificially inflate the perception in the media and in the public view that this is a larger problem than it is. So if this is a problem, and this is the point of view they come from, we have this problem. Well, we have a ready made solution. We have a new mRNA vaccine we could give to all the chickens that will solve this problem of them having the bird flu. So now they're introducing it in the food supply in that way, and they've been devious about all of this stuff.
Yeah. So they're trying to get it into us one way or another, I guess. Um, so I kind of want to sort of go on a different track right now and bring up why us, Wayne? What makes us special? And I do also want to point out that Steiner talked about how they were going to use vaccines in the future to remove the spirit. So that doesn't escape my attention either. That's something I thought about a lot these past 5 years. So why us? What makes us so special? Why are they doing this?
Well, humans are made in the image of God, and that's what we are told in the Bible. We're created in God's image, so there's something special about the human being. We have this divine spark. We have this spiritual individuation within us, and we are special in that regard. And they don't want us to realize our special place in nature. We have dominion here on earth, and they don't want all human beings to have this dominion. You see, they've kind of tried to separate themselves out, these controllers of this place, into a separate species altogether. And this goes through science fiction as far back as we could look, where they've devised this system where they want to split us along these different class lines, where there's an upper class or a ruling class, an elite class, and then there's the underclass. And this is something they've tried to engineer for the longest time, where they will espouse that some people are more quote unquote spiritually evolved than others, and therefore they have this type of divine right to rule. And that's what they've tried to do. They've tried to establish these lines of delineation between the initiates or the elites or the adepts, and then those of us that they call the profane. And that's the rest of humanity, the public, those of us that belong to this lower class of people. That's what this Olympian class, as they like to call themselves, think about the rest of us. They refer to us as human resources. They see us as little more than cattle. Where do you think that term came from, human resources?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we have the divine spark. We are immortal. They don't want us knowing that. To the point where they've turned things so much on their head with this plan of theirs that they've told us they can give us digital immortality, and they are trying to digitize our DNA. This is all part of this plan. Because it seems to me, they can control the Borg, which seems to be the direction they're trying to take us in. They want us to be human Borgs instead of human beings because human beings have spirit. We have the divine spark. They can't control us when we're empowered that way. Um, so, oh gosh, I forget what the question was. But that seems to be what their plan is to turn us more into human Borgs.
Yeah, essentially what they're trying to do here, and this touches on a couple different philosophies right here when you look at the occult origins of some of the idea here. What they're attempting to do is they're attempting to engineer us in a certain direction wherein we deny and disregard the spiritual aspects of reality. They're trying to steer us into what I call the hyper materialist paradigm. And that's the way of thinking that they've established with our modern science. They want us to think in terms of all phenomena being explainable by some physical cause and effect sequence. For example, they want us to think that consciousness is nothing more than the electrochemical byproduct of the brain and brainstem. Well, if that is truly the case, and that's what they want us to believe, then they could reproduce that in a machine. It boils down to little more than an algorithm. So they could duplicate that in a computer, and therefore they could duplicate your consciousness or allow your consciousness to live on in some digital state in a machine. And that's essentially what they're espousing with this transhumanist philosophy. And this all ties back to a scientific discipline known as cybernetics. And this is massively important because most people don't understand the true nature of what cybernetics is. When I
Hmm.
say cybernetics, people often think of robotics and maybe artificial intelligence, but that's only a small portion of it. And in order to understand this, we could delve into the roots of cybernetics. What it is, cybernetics comes from a Greek word, kybernetes, which literally means steersman or pilot. It's the science of control, controlling whole systems. That's what cybernetics is about. It's about controlling whole systems, and how do they do that? Well, they have to come up with some type of a mathematical formulation for doing so, which is why these people in positions of power are all about attempting to quantify or measure everything. Because if you could quantify a thing, that gives you some degree of control over that. That's why they're attempting to objectively measure things that maybe can't even be objectively measured in a true sense. But even if they get some type of a rudimentary measurement of it, it gives them some modicum of generalized control over that thing. So even if it's an imprecise measurement, they could still utilize it to steer things in a general direction. So that's why they attempt to quantify everything, and thus they invented the whole science of quantum physics. That's what it's about. It's about measuring and weighing everything, being able to quantify everything down to a fundamental particle to institute some type of control over that thing. So even subjective things like spirituality or human consciousness, they could control it by making a model based on a mathematical formulation, quantifying it in some way. And it does give them some degree of control. So there's an important facet of all of it, and that's one of the reasons why they want to digitize everything. It gives them that mathematical control model.
Yes, yes. And cybernetics. And I know something I think is important for people. You pointed something out. It made me like really think that what ties into cybernetics and part of this whole thing is that economists are the social engineers, and they're a part of this too. That uh, economics is a part of this too.
Well, economics in its most base form is actually a type of a cybernetic system when you look at it that way. Because here's what they do. They introduce a measure of social energy, and that is the dollar. So the dollar is a measure of social energy. So if you could control where the dollars are spent and how they're spent, where the dollars go, you control the social energy. So therefore, if a person, say, can't afford to buy food, they're very limited in their activities they could do. If they're kept at this base established minimum level of subsistence living,
Hmm.
then their options are limited and therefore they can't really effectively rebel about their situation, can they? And
Right.
that measures of control that they use economic shock testing to test the waters with some of this stuff too. They've done this in the past, and I would highly recommend for anybody listening, go find an old document titled Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars and read it cover to cover, and it will give you a very good established idea of how it is that they use economics to control people and how this is a system of control and that these people are social engineers. Because once you begin to understand the dollar is a measure of social energy, then you can understand how it is that economists are social engineers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so did we go into Project Stargate? Is there more we could say about that? Because is that something that's very closely on the horizon, Wayne, that we should maybe elaborate on a little bit more?
It's definitely something we should keep our eyes on. Now,
Okay.
in within the days of the announcement of this Project Stargate initiative, all of a sudden this Chinese company DeepSeek came out and really upended the whole tech world for a couple of days. It decimated the stock market and everything because they came out with a cheaper model of AI that could operate and compete with higher end models that are much more expensive. So this kind of upended the whole notion of the AI initiative. So I don't know what else to add to that other than
Okay.
the
Yeah.
fact that a lot of this money may not be going towards what they're saying it's going towards, that there might be something a little deeper at play here because it's been demonstrated that you could develop some of these more rudimentary AI tools for a lot cheaper than what's been done. So where's this $500 billion really going? And I would suspect it's going more towards a system that's engineered to be more all encapsulating than just a standard artificial intelligence tool. So when we look at it from that regard, we know it's about building this panopticon control grid. So I think we need to keep our eyes on that. And plus, there are some esoteric connotations involved with the whole Stargate name as well. Because when you think about it, what actually is the Stargate? Well, I would hold to the notion that the human being himself is the Stargate. We are the connection, we are the conduit, the bridge between worlds, between the spiritual worlds and the physical world. We are that connection point. It even says in the Bible, know ye not that ye are the temple of God? And certainly that's something that's important here. So when you explore the avenues of thought associated with the notion of Stargate and you delve into the occult teachings about this concept, you find that it's all about maybe the incursion of some type of a spiritual entity into this world that doesn't belong here. And that raises all sorts of other philosophical concerns with it, aside from just the obvious physical concerns that we have about this whole AI initiative.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit? Sorry, have a drink of water. You've been talking so much, and I appreciate all this information. Thank you so much. Um, would you mind talking a little bit about that aspect? Because I think that's really important.
The spiritual side, I guess you're.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we actually look into the background of a lot of this stuff, we can see that at the core of all of it, we are fighting a spiritual battle. And this is the important aspect of it. And when you realize that they're at the topmost levels of the power structure in this world, there are what I call the dark occultists who run things, and just beneath them are their minions that run around and perform the policy work that they need done, called the technocrats. Now, these dark occultists who run things, they are often steered and directed by some non human intelligences. And of course, they will deny this vehemently. But if you look and you research into many of these occult fraternities and secret society groups, you find that it is acknowledged, even by their own writings and their own words, that the outer heads of these orders are often indwelt by some non human spirit that gives them guidance and direction. And this is a hugely concerning thing because when you consider that it may be possible that some dark spiritual entity is trying to steer and direct this development for some reason, that gives you pause for concern, at least if you're thinking in a spiritually minded kind of way. Of course, they would like for us to totally disregard any of that and think of it solely in terms of the strict physical nature of things. And this actually hits on something else that was described by Rudolf Steiner and others. Now, Rudolf Steiner, he described this way of thinking as the spirit of Ahriman. And what is this? This is the steering and guiding and directing of human beings into accepting that this physical material world that we live in is all that there is, and there's nothing spiritual beyond that, and that all phenomena can be explained away as some physical cause and effect sequence. So this is the spirit of Ahriman, identified by Rudolf Steiner. I would call that the spirit of Antichrist. This is what scientism, which is a better name for our modern science, this is what scientism has been establishing in this world. It wants people to totally disregard the existence of spiritual realms beyond here, spiritual things around about us, and just focus strictly on the material paradigm. So, this in and of itself becomes problematic when you realize that there are spiritual entities from the outside trying to engineer this viewpoint into the minds of men. Now, why are they doing that? Well, it would seem the preponderance of evidence points to the fact that they want to manifest here themselves and replace the human spirit in this way. And this is actually described in the study of Hermeticism as the world of shells. It's all about the dead entity, and you could see how our society has been carefully engineered and crafted through the course of time to accept this notion of the dead entity. What is the dead entity? Corporation. Look at the root words, the etymology of words. Corporation, the dead entity. Same root word as corpse. And of course, you factor in other aspects of this, which have been subtly engineered into our society for a long time. Things like the legal fiction, the straw man identity. It's all based on this dead entity notion. The legal fiction, that would be, if you look at your driver's license, you'll notice your name is in all capital letters. That is a legal fiction that represents you. It's a symbol representing you. It is not an actual person. You are the person. But this is a legal fiction that represents you, and they want you to identify completely as this legal fiction, this dead entity. Now, Michael Hoffman calls this the reign of dead matter, and he couldn't be any more correct on this. When you realize that at the topmost levels of the power structure in this world, it's a death cult that likes to push death based ideologies upon us. It's all based upon this premise. So, where does this come from? Well, if you consider that we have these spiritual powers, entities, intelligences, whatever you want to call them, that are reaching out here to those on this side of the coin to try to establish this world of dead entities here. They want to build this world of shells, as the Hermeticists call it, and that would be these empty vehicles devoid of any spirit whatsoever. Well, that leaves a gaping hole in a spiritual sense in these vehicles here. So, what will fill that void? You see, in order for there to be any type of existence, there has to be motion. There has to be an animus or a spirit behind it. So, these spiritless shells that are left behind, something will inhabit those.
Hmm.
And this is all part of the hugely compelling and concerning part of all of this when you really delve down into it. And I don't think you have to necessarily accept that notion of things, but when you realize that there are people in positions of power in this world that believe in these concepts and act upon them, the things they do to act upon their belief in this will affect all of us. So whether you believe it or not, it's immaterial. They believe it. And so you better understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I feel like. And now we've got a little over 15 minutes left. I definitely want to touch on solutions or any advice you have for people. I definitely, well, I mean, you yourself, Wayne, I feel like are a solution. You and your shows, just by giving people this knowledge. And so people can acknowledge, act on the knowledge of what you just said, that we need to be aware that plans are being made for us, and ignoring them away is not going to help. I definitely think, the action of non-cooperation um, is a big one, me personally. And also just making people aware of this because they're going to make it sound great. They're going to make it sound so safe and wonderful and convenient and um, and inevitable. But we can't be fooled by that. And we need to realize there is another way, and we need to be able to recognize it when we see it and make sure that we don't propagate it. So do you have any, before we go, we've got 15 minutes left, suggestions, advice for people now that you've kind of laid out what the plans are and how they're going to attempt to implement them?
Well, there's a couple common sense things we can do, first of all, to stave all of this off and to really push back against it and maybe build a better future for ourselves. Because here's the hope that I have and that I know: the future is not immutable. Okay, it can be changed. They have a certain vision for the future they want for us, but we don't have to go there because everything that is done in this world, everything that has been done and is done in this world, is all based on a metaphysical principle of consent. So, therefore, you have to consent to it. But here's where the trick comes in. What they've done is they've engineered a system where they will introduce an idea to you through some form of entertainment, usually. And if you don't object to that idea, then they will take that as your tacit consent to it at some future time. Now, this is called revelation of the method within the occult fraternities and the occult systems that they give. It's also called predictive programming by those who study conspiracies. So we see a lot of this all the time. It comes out in the entertainment field first, and then they see if you don't object to that or reject that, they view that as your tacit consent to have that done. So therefore, they just proceed with whatever plans that they have. So recognizing this is one key constituent to it. And all of these things that come to us are an offer. Because you see, they can't violate the free will principle, and they know this. So they've come up with some clever workarounds. There are some natural laws that govern this place in which we live, this creation that we live in, that our Creator made. And they can't violate these natural laws. So they've worked some clever workarounds about it, but it's all based on the free will principle. So in order to do something, they have to have your consent. So everything is a contract. Everything is an offer. But here's where we have power. You could reject the offer. And it doesn't have to be some type of a violent incursion or anything like that, like they've been trying to falsely engineer an insurrection or anything like that. And I could go on at length about the whole January 6th debacle, how it was all engineered and contrived, but I won't. That's a
Yeah.
subject for.
That's another
But
show.
yeah, but like this is the thing that they look for. So they want to try to incite a violent response from people because then that gives them justification to shut them down. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can reject an idea or an offer from these people without getting violent about it. And this is wherein we do have a lot of power. Now, how do we do that exactly? Well, a lot of it comes right down to individual choices. And we all have individual choices. So I advise people be the change that you want to see in the world. You don't have to accept any of the offers they give you. Now, they might try to make your life as uncomfortable as possible in order to coerce you into taking that. And we saw this going on with the whole COVID scam here. They were trying to force people to getting vaccinated. But you'll notice they can't just outright force people. That they know violates the free will principle. So what do? They coerce people. They offer them free donuts. Go down and get your vaccine and we'll give you a free donut. You know what? That's not working as well as we'd hoped. Here's another thing. Okay, if you want to keep your job, now you need to go get vaccinated. We're not telling you have to. We're not forcing you. But if you want to keep a paycheck rolling in, you should probably do that. And how many people did they get on the hook with that? And that all later got rejected anyway and turned down because it's not right and people know it. So, at any rate, this is how they operate. They might be able to make your life a little uncomfortable with their offers if you reject their offer, but you are not obligated to take their offer. And this is where we have hope and we have power. So, there are some simple solutions that we could have to keep things on the right track. One, like I said, is be the change you want to see in the world. The second thing you can do is develop some skills and some basic strategies for survival for yourself. Know how to plant a garden, know how to grow some food, know how to have some preparedness ready. Like keep about 3 weeks worth of food in your house, have some tools, have some building skills, have some way to survive off grid if the need should arise, and you'll be fine. Also, one key component to this whole system that they want to snap in place is electronic digital currency. Now, here's a common sense approach we could take. Use physical cash. Even though it is fiat currency, we still need a physical means of exchange. And to reject that causes all kinds of problems, as people who have suffered through natural disasters in recent months have discovered. If you don't have cash, you can't do business when the power's out somewhere. So we could have that. We need to keep that. Use cash, buy local. That's a common sense thing we can do in order to stave off this system, because they will try to make it attractive. They will try to offer us the convenience of a digital currency, and then they're going to roll out their universal basic income with that, and that'll be the real cherry on top to get people to sign up for this or to go ahead and take that offer. So we need to just reject those certain things, and that's a couple of ways we could do that. Preparedness, by having goodwill, exposing this information to people, letting them know there are other ways to operate, and reject that digital currency, because that is the key to snapping in place this AI control system they want.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just before we go, so let's say we have someone listening that they took the COVID vaccines and they're like, oh my gosh. Ah. Do you have any suggestions on, I mean, is there a detox protocol that you've heard of that you feel comfortable sharing or
There are several detox protocols out there that I'm aware of. Now, there's a couple people that have offered different formulations. There are certain things that they say are good for this, like DMSO. It's a substance you need to use very carefully and under the guidance of somebody who's familiar with it to do so. But that's one of the things they say is a good detoxifier. There's other detox protocols you could use. I would personally recommend there's a supplement called N-acetylcysteine, NAC for short. This one is great for detoxing. You could use 12 to 1800 milligrams of that per day in order to help detox your system of certain things. Now, that is not a complete detox in and of itself, but it does help to alleviate a lot of symptoms. Now, as far as actually eliminating all of these spike proteins and stuff from your body, I don't know if that's going to be 100% feasible. There are those who know more about that than myself and have protocols in place. But the problem with these mRNA vaccines is they change your genetic structure. So if you take it, your body begins to produce these spike proteins in and of itself. Anytime it's exposed to them, it starts to produce more of them, and it causes chronic inflammation in your body. And thus, we're seeing a lot of medical things happening with people now as a result of that. So, we need to be mindful of this stuff. And I certainly don't have all the answers, but there are people out there who have detox protocols that can help, but the long term effects are still largely unknown simply because we're only now beginning to see some of the problems coming about with it. Now, of course, if you've been listening to people like me for any length of time, I've been telling you since beforehand, don't take this stuff. It's bad news because they don't know what the long term effects are. And the things that they do know are not good. And they were not very forthright with the things they do know. They knew this was going to be a train wreck going into it. They knew that it was going to cause all kinds of health problems with people going into it. And that shows you the true intention behind it. In my view, this was a eugenics program, a culling, the great culling they've been talking about for a long time. So a lot of people have taken these vaccines, but there's also good news with that too. Because just like any other pharmaceutical like that, in order for them to get accurate data for themselves, they have to have a placebo in place. So a lot of people, from what I understand, got placebos or got different lot numbers of some of these vaccines that were not as efficacious as others, that didn't have the proprietary blend in there that actually causes the cells to begin to produce this spike protein in mass. And therefore, there's a lot of people that haven't had as bad of effects. But we do hear the horror stories about it all the time. And of course, the medical mainstream will reject all of that and claim there's nothing to it and keep telling you they're safe and effective. Go get your shot. And you just can't reason with those people anymore because you can show them study after study after study, and they'll come up with some excuse that it's okay and that's false.
Oh, it's
But
long COVID.
what's that?
It's long COVID.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
Right.
a code word for vaccine injury or
Right.
vaccine shedding injury.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, but at
Yeah.
any rate, that's a whole other show.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, just in closing, we got 5 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with as far as where you prefer them to find you? Anything upcoming you have that you'd like to talk about?
If people are interested in learning more about my work, they could go to my website, www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. I have links to all my work on there. Everything I do is listed there. So I am in the process of writing a new book that should be out within the next 2 months or so. If all things go well, I've run into some delays in actually publishing it. My wife just had surgery and is recovering from surgery and stuff. So
Oh,
things have slowed me down a little bit, but I've been working on it and hope to have it out soon.
well, we'll look forward to that, Wayne, and I hope your wife feels better. Yeah. Um, well, thank you so much. And just to remind everyone, I will put a link to Wayne's website in the show notes. Okay, so nice and easy, just click on that and it'll be there for you. So, thank you so much again. We appreciate you. Keep up the great work. We look forward to your book and hopefully we'll see you again soon. All right, take care, everyone. Goodbye.